If I could rewind the tape and go back in time to my first trip to the hardwood dealer, I wouldn't change what I bought, but I would change what I knew, and I would change what I brought with me. And that's the point of today's video, is to take you through what you need to know and kind of demystify what it means to go to your local hardwood dealer. I hope by the end of this video you figure out that confidence doesn't come from knowing everything. It comes from doing something once and realizing that it's not that hard. So let's get into it. So when I made my first trip to the hardwood lumber dealer, I didn't bring a tape measure, I didn't bring a notebook, I didn't have any idea how the board selection process worked. I didn't know what I could touch, what I couldn't touch. I didn't know how the checkout process worked. I didn't know if I could ask questions. Let's just say the list of things I didn't know could fill many volumes. And so hopefully after today's video, we'll get all that laid out and you'll have a better understanding than I did, and you'll be ready for your first trip to the hardwood lumber store. So if you're thinking about heading to your local hardwood dealer sometime soon, this video is for you. So here's what we're going to cover in this video. We're going to talk about what to bring with you to the store. We're going to talk about how these stores work. We're going to answer the question of how many quarters do you need? Intrigued? Stay tuned. I'll explain that in just a few minutes. Board feet made simple. I'm going to teach you how to calculate board feet in a way that you'll just remember. What the writing on the boards mean. I had no idea what any of this meant when I first got to the hardwood lumber yard. I actually thought the guys didn't know how to spell. We're going to talk about how to check boards the right way when you're in the store before you bring them home. I'm going to encourage you not to chase perfect wood, and I'll explain why. I'm going to make my recommendation for the best 3 hardwoods that I think you should consider buying while you're at the hardwood store for your first projects, and I'll explain why. And last but not least, I'm going to talk to you about how to pay, how to check out, how to carry your stuff around the store, and how to load it into your vehicle such that you can get it home safe and sound, no damage to the wood, and hopefully no damage to your vehicle. So let's start with what to bring with you. Maybe you're not going to buy anything at your first trip to the hardwood lumber dealer, but let's not prepare for that. Let's prepare for you to bring something home. So you need to bring a tape measure, something short. 6 foot would be fine. 12 foot maybe if you're buying longer boards. You need a pen and a pencil, and you need a small notepad, or use your phone if you're one of those high-techy types. You'll want to bring some tie-downs, some kind of straps, and maybe a blanket. I don't know what you're bringing stuff home in, but if you're putting it inside your car, and we'll get into this later in the video, they'll actually make courtesy cuts for you to help you get things into your car if you need. And blankets can help keep things from sliding around and boogering up the inside of your car or tearing up the wood that you bought. Okay, so let's talk about how these stores work. Typically, I say typically, I've only purchased hardwoods in a few different states, and this is US-based information, so perhaps it's different in Europe and elsewhere around the world, but typically the hardwood section of the showroom is self-service. You pick your board, you decide what you want, there'll be some plastic carts there that you can put your wood onto, and you take it up to the register to pay for it. Sheet goods, however, plywood and stuff like that, are usually handled differently. Those are normally pulled by store staff. They'll give you a sheet of paper, a printout that shows how many pieces of plywood you bought. You'll take that to the front and pay, and then you can come back out and load it up. It's totally okay to touch the wood in the showroom part of the hardwood store. There'll be racks with vertically stored hardwoods, and they'll usually be categorized by species. And it's totally okay to pick them up and touch them and hold them and look at them and measure them yourself, do the things that you need to do with them, but be cool and put them back on the rack where you got them when you're done. Prices are usually not marked on each individual board, but you can figure it out pretty easily, and I'll go through that here in just a few minutes. Once you've picked out the boards that you want to take home with you, you'll generally take them up to the register. Someone will remeasure and confirm that the board feet indication is accurate, and then they'll ring you up. You'll pay with whatever form of payment you got, and you're off to the race. So how many quarters do you need? That's kind of a weird thing to say. And it's kind of a weird way to mark this stuff. They've got 44 on here, 44. Like, you might be wondering, what does that mean? Well, board thickness at a hardwood store is measured and indicated in quarters of an inch. So what I'd like you to do is think about this in terms of a US quarter, 25-cent piece like this one. So if I were to say you have 4 quarters, how much money do you have? That's right, you've got $1, or 1 inch in wood terms. So this 44 on this board is not 44. It would be normally indicated as like a fraction, 4 over 4, which reduces to 1, or 1 inch, and that is the thickness of this board. Now when you measure your boards, you're going to find that this board's actually a little thicker than 1 inch. That's because the quarter measurement system is based on what this board can be used for not what it's currently at. Normally a hardwood dealer will sell you a board that's a little thicker than what it's indicated, because by the time you take it home and mill it, sand it, and finish it, you'll end up with a 1-inch board. Let's do another one. Let's say you have 8/4. How much money do you have? That's right, you got $2. So this 8/4 here, this tree wasn't cut in 1984. This is indicating that this is an 8/4 board, or 8/4, or a 2-inch thick board. So let's do one more. Let's say you have 2/4. How much money do you have? 50 cents, or 0.5, or half an inch. So one of the ways to think about the quarter measurement of boards is, even if you have something that's 12/4, that simply means that if you had 12/4, you have $3. That means that the board is 3 inches thick. So hopefully you find that helpful. So I mentioned earlier board feet, and that's the measurement system that lumber yards use to sell their products. So now that's normally the length of the board times the width of the board times the thickness of the board, and then divided by a value. If you use inches in all of your measurements, you'll want to divide by 144. I'll put that right here. If you do the width of the board in inches and the thickness of the board in inches and the length of the board in feet, you want to divide by 12 to get the board feet. I'll put that formula up here for you too. So now you can take that number. Most lumber yards will actually write it on the board for you. And if you take out your own tape and you get a different measurement, don't go to arguing with them. Oftentimes they'll give you a bit of a break if a board's damaged at one end, or it's got splits, cracks, or if it's got some water damage on the end, they'll take that off in their own measurement. So go with the measurement that's on the board, because that's what you're going to be paying for. So as we've seen already, there's a lot of writing that can be on these boards that all of it has meaning, and if you understand the shorthand, you can really be a pro in the hardwood store. You'll find yourself helping other people out before you know it. So weird things like this typo of the word cherry, at least that's what I thought the first time I saw it. So don't think that they don't know how to spell. This is their shorthand. Usually the first 4 letters indicate the species, in this case it's cherry, and then the last letter tells you what kind of cherry. This is rustic cherry. This is gummy cherry. See the spelling difference? This is C-H-E-R, cherry, G, gummy. And this is cherry, C-H-E-R-R, rustic. They don't really look anything alike, but they're both in the cherry species. They're just different subspecies, different types of wood. So understanding that shorthand can really help you out when you're in the store. All right, so let's talk about how to check a board when you're in the store. The last thing you want to do is buy something that's pretty and get it home and it's a train wreck. You don't want that. So when you're looking at boards in the store, you want to take the board and you want to sight down all 4 of these long corners one at a time, and you want to look down the board, and you're looking for boards that move, curl, twist, cup. Any of this kind of movement is really not a good idea if this is your first trip to the hardwood store. Some people will probably comment there's all kinds of ways that you can fix that and it's still a good board and you can still use it. That's all fine. I'm not arguing any of that. I'm saying if this is your first trip to the hardwood lumber yard, you should do your best to find the straightest, best board that you can find. While you're at it, you want to look at the ends of the boards. You want to check for splits and cracks and what they call checks. It's very common for them to paint the ends of boards at the hardwood lumber yard, because this helps to prevent and reduce the opportunity for those splits and cracks to happen. Another thing to be on the lookout for when you're checking these boards is for water damage. I don't know if you can see it or not, but this piece of walnut actually has about 2 inches of water damage on the end. That's not really usable. If you see wood that has this kind of pattern on it in the store, you really should pass, regardless of how pretty you think the rest of the board is. If you don't think you can trust your eye to look down the boards and see whether or not they're curled, cupped, or twisted, take one of these boards and lay it on the floor of the showroom. It's typically concrete that's been poured by professionals, and it may not be dead flat, but if you lay this down and push on it, you'll be able to tell if it rocks back and forth, and that's telling you that the board is twisted. So assume you're going to lose a few inches off of one or both ends of your board from that splitting, because you don't really want to use that in your project. You're rarely going to be able to use the entire board that you bought from the store in a project. So ask yourself, when you're looking at a board, ask yourself, does the board have the pieces that you need for your project? Can you work between the knots or between the other defects? And can you get what you need for your project out of a particular board? This video is designed to help you make your first trip to the hardwood dealer. And that's not to find the perfect board, but to find a good board. Beginners need to learn that perfect boards aren't what make great projects. Good layout is what makes great projects. Chasing the perfect board is just frustrating, and you don't need that frustration. You really have to remember that wood is a natural material. No two boards are ever going to look alike, and you're always going to find some level of defect in the wood, and that level of defect often affects the price of the wood. So I mentioned earlier that I would go over the 3 hardwood boards that I recommend for beginners and why. So let's get into that next. So first up, we've got knotty alder. I like knotty alder because, for one, it's more affordable. I can find this at my hardwood dealer for around $4 a board foot, and that's kind of on the lower end. You won't really find hardwoods much more affordable than that. It has knots in it, which is one of the reasons why this particular species is called knotty alder. What I like about it is that it's on the softer side for a hardwood, and that means it's easy for you to sand, cut, mill, and finish easier than other hardwoods that we're going to talk about. I like knotty alder because it has just enough knots in it to give it some character without it looking overly rustic. So if you're making a bookshelf, for example, these 4/4, 1-inch boards make perfect floating shelves, and with minimal work. You can sand them down, round the edges, counterbore some holes into them. I'm going to make a future video where I'm going to show the hidden shelf pins that I like to use, but I think this is a good wood to start with because it's soft, it's forgiving, it takes finish well, it's affordable, and it's just fun to work with. It makes for nice, interesting looking projects. Okay, number 2. That funky green wood that you see at the lumberyard. This is called poplar. I like poplar because it has a real nice straight grain to it. It's a lot harder than knotty alder, but not as hard as the last wood we're going to talk about. So that means it's also easy to sand and break edges and cut and mill and work with. And if you're looking for a paint grade project, poplar is probably your top choice. Again, it's around $4 a board foot, so it's on the lower end of the cost scale. And if you need something where strength is more important than what it looks like shop furniture, for example, poplar is a great way to go. And last on our list, third, this board's heavy, is red oak. I like red oak because it's strong, readily available, it's very hard, it has a very straight grain, it has a very consistent grain. This is perfect for your first small furniture project, like an end table. It has a very open grain, which means it takes stain well without blotting and splotching and having a variety of stain darknesses on it. It's still fairly affordable. It's more expensive than the other 2, but still not as expensive as a cherry or a walnut. All right, so finally, let's talk about paying, loading, and leaving with some confidence. Don't rush the checkout process. These people at the hardwood dealer, they expect novice woodworkers, they expect people to have lots of questions, and they're happy to answer them. You'll find that you'll have great conversations with the people that work in the store, and it's okay to ask them questions. If you see them measuring board feet, ask them to explain how they do it. They have no problem usually in talking to you and answering these questions. So don't rush the checkout process. If there's people behind you, they can wait. Don't feel like you need to hurry up and get out because you don't want to inconvenience the people behind you. I say that because that's how I tend to operate, and it's just not a good way. When you're all done and in the car headed home, be sure you hold on to your receipt. It's really good to file those away, primarily so the next time you go to the hardwood dealer and you buy more wood, you can compare those 2 receipts, and you can see for yourself in your own region what the price difference is when prices go up or go down, or when availability goes up and goes down. So hold on to those receipts. They make good references later on. As I mentioned earlier, most hardwood dealers are willing to make crosscuts for you to help you fit it into your car. If you've got to get on the high-speed freeway to get back home from the hardwood dealer and you don't want these sticking out the window or out the back of your vehicle, they'll often make complimentary cuts for you. You just need to let them know and be patient. It might take them a few minutes to get it back to the mill area of their showroom and get it cut and get it brought back out to you. As I mentioned earlier, make sure you bring some tie-down straps, some rope, some blankets, something to keep this stuff from moving around. It is really prone to slipping and sliding as you drive when you drive home, and I don't know how you drive. You could be Mario Andretti on the way home, so make sure you secure this stuff in your vehicle so it's not moving around on the ride home. And lastly, I'd consider strongly taking a moment when you're all done with your purchase at the hardwood dealer and you're in your car and you're getting ready to leave the parking lot. Take just a few minutes to pause and ask yourself, how was that? What did I learn? What did Cale forget to tell me? What did I miss? So, like I mentioned earlier, hopefully you realize at this point that confidence doesn't come from knowing everything. It comes from doing a thing once and realizing that it's actually not that hard. So I hope you learned something from this video. I hope this video helps you develop the confidence to go to your local hardwood dealer and go in and ask questions. Talk to the people in the store. Even if you don't make a purchase, do a reconnaissance run. Just go check it out. If you need a really easier tier into going to the hardwood dealer, go to your local Rockler store or your local woodcraft store. They don't have the same level of variety and quantity as the hardwood dealer does, but they do have hardwoods and they do have people that work in the store, and they do expect you to ask questions. So you can always go there first and kind of get your sea legs for getting ready for your trip to the hardwood dealer. At any rate, that's it for me, friends. Till next time, peace, love, and sawdust. I'm out.